Hi, I'm Adriana from Foam Blast, and this is the Dart Zone Pro Mark II, and I want to know if it's good enough to make its way onto my hip for the next competitive tournament. But first, disclaimer time. Dart Zone sent us the Dart Zone Pro Mark II early and for free. We don't typically do reviews on this channel unless I am personally excited about something. All my statements about the blaster are entirely my own, no script or talking points were provided from Dart Zone, and no payment was exchanged. This is the Dart Zone Pro Mark II. It's a 6-dart mag-fed pistol. It comes with this muzzle thing on the front, a holster for the pistol, 2 speed loaders, a holster for the speed loaders, and 18 darts. It has a really stiff prime, so I'd say it's not really for kids. If you want the basic points, basic overview of the blaster, go check out Drax review, Wallcom's review. I'm sure Naptown Nerf will have one very soon. Those are my go-to reviewers to figure out if I should be excited about a product. But judging by the advertising for the Mark II, I really think that this is meant for competitive Nerf. So I want to know, is the Mark II viable as a secondary in a competitive context? And I do want to stress there is no wrong way to play. These are just my opinions based on my experience and my love of competitive Nerf. And I do think that this is a question that I can answer because my team has won 3 national level competitive tournaments. So that speaks for itself, I guess. So what do I use as a secondary? I don't. I think that the best secondary is a better primary. But I'm also lucky that I haven't been punished for that mindset. It's important to think about where you are on your blaster journey. If you're prone to blaster malfunctions or failures, you're probably going to want a secondary. I've been lucky that I've had lots of people helping me, and I haven't had to deal with those issues very much, if at all. I think that the Mark II has been the most compelling option for a secondary, and it might just make me carry one. So what is a secondary and when should you use them? I think that they're mostly meant for when your primary has a malfunction and you physically cannot use it. That's when you should pull your secondary. Also when you're out of ammo, because it's just difficult to be able to reload a primary blaster, and it'll be way easier to pull a secondary in that situation when you do not have any ammo left. How I've seen other people use secondaries is like holding 2 blasters to cover both sides of the cover when they're afraid of being bunkered. I've seen people pull their secondaries instead of doing a standard reload on their primary. And I've also seen them pull out their secondaries for a mercy shot at close range if they're going to bunker somebody. I think that those create an obstacle for you that could have been overcome with strategy or more practice with your primary. The exception to that being the mercy shot if that's in your rule set to have a lower FPS at close range. Obviously, follow the rules of your group. Some current popular options for secondaries are the Chronos, which uses a different type of ammunition, so it's more difficult to scavenge on the field. And if you chrono mag it, then you have a magazine in your secondary, and that makes it really difficult to carry and holster, and it's just a little funky. Hurricane is another popular option, but they're really finicky to reload, and flywheels are not very accurate, to say the least. And then there's the Hammer Shot, which I think is one of the more viable secondaries. They have a lot of holsters, making it super easy to carry, but it's difficult to get it up to the competitive level while still remaining easy and efficient to prime. So how does the Dart Zone Pro Mark II feel? Well, it's crazy sturdy. I feel like I could just chuck it across a parking lot and then feel totally okay just using it in the next game. There's absolutely no flex in this shell. The prime is stiff, but it's not too difficult, and the slide does have enough purchase to get a grip on it, even if your hands are a little sweaty. The grip itself is not as comfortable as the Mark I, but it's not terrible. I did blister myself on the top of my thumb knuckle, but that might just be a me problem. I think I choke up on my grips a little too much. I also tend to blister my other finger on trigger guards. That's just a standard issue for me personally. Darts breach really smoothly into it, and if it doesn't go correctly, you can actually feel it and you know that a funky shot is going to come out. The speed loaders do take a smidge of practice before it feels totally natural, but it does get there quickly. The top load is super easy to do and overall just feels good to use. Gear is one of the selling points for this blaster set. It's an incredibly important part of the loadout and it's going to be different for everybody. And again, no wrong way to play, I am just allergic to gear. My ideal loadout is my jersey, my slide pants, one extra mag. I recently got a chalk bag because I think a dump pouch is too large and Jeng said that I needed to scavenge more. Like, that is how allergic I am to gear. So adding new gear is a big deal to me and I am super nitpicky. So alone, the holster is great. It's semi-rigid, there's some adjustability to it, though it is right-handed only, except maybe if you like mount it on your back as a left-handed person. It grips the blaster really well without feeling like it's holding too tightly. There's a nice pop when you're holstering and when you're drawing, so it just feels good to use. I do get the front sight caught when I'm holstering sometimes, but that's not too big of a deal. You don't need to worry about putting it away quickly as much as you need to worry about getting it out quickly. I'm not a huge fan of the belt mount. The beaver tail on the blaster itself is a little bit too long when the holster is mounted at hip height. My elbow hits it a little bit there, but there are tons of other options for holsters. That is a plus of the real steel silhouette of the blaster. There's going to be so many holsters available for it, whether it be real steel or airsoft. I'll probably end up getting a thigh holster for it, or maybe in the middle of my back. I'm not sure. We'll see. Now the speed loaders I do consider part of the gear. The plastic they're made of is pretty solid. The spring inside is super light, but it doesn't need to be strong. The spring isn't pushing the darts, your fingers are. It clicks into place in the blaster really nicely, so you know it's in there properly and it's impossible to load backwards, which is great. The motion to actually feed the darts in requires a little bit of practice, but seriously, only a little bit. I got the hang of it really quickly. I do have some issues with the Speedloader holster. When used as intended, it has a delightful click, it's very secure, but it's intended to be used when it's full and upside down. So the Ion Rush players can ignore me for just a minute, but if I took these Speedloaders on the field, I would want them empty and face up so that I can scavenge for King of the Hill. That is impossible with this holder because the sliders can't move through the plastic of the holster itself. So you could modify it, cut a gap all the way down the side of the holster for most of the length, but that could lose a little bit of the security of the holster itself. I'm sure there are also other carrying solutions that are possible, but I think that this is a really important consideration. Also on the topic of the holster for the Speedloaders, I prefer to wear it on my back because it bends a little bit too much for my taste on the hip. I feel like I can't put them back in quite as easily as I can on my hip as I do on my back. My shirt also gets caught in between the Speedloader and the holster sometimes, so if you do decide to use the holster on the belt, make sure you tuck your shirt in. Let me tell you why those complaints are irrelevant. You shouldn't need to use your secondary very often. And it's even less likely that you'll need to use the Speedloaders. If you're playing Ion Rush, is it good for your team to start with 6 darts in the Speedloader? That's 6 darts you're taking away from your primary or from one of your teammates. In any capped mode, is it good for your team to start with extras for a secondary? I think I'm likely to start with 2 darts in my secondary blaster and then top load from there. But for practice, they are amazing. Using the Speedloaders in practice, you're not disturbing your flow every 6 shots. You can just keep on shooting, keep your focus. It's great, and you should be practicing. In the event that you can't use your primary, can you hit the same shots? This is how I play King of the Hill. My typical engagement distance for my King of the Hill position is about 50 feet or less, yay bunkering. So I took a piece of cover, standard for the game that I play. I attached a 1-foot target to it, and this is a totally unscientific and a little unfair test. I used Michelle's King of the Hill primary, this magic Dauntless Talon Claw. We had a scar on the end. It's tuned by who I think is the best Springer builder in the hobby, Ton, so this is an unfair test. And then I fired an Aeon Pro just to see what another stock blaster was like, and I haven't used that blaster very much at all. And then I fired the Dart Zone Mark II. I've put probably 200 to 300 rounds of practice into it. I'm not quite used to pistol ergo yet, but I think I'm starting to get there. So I took 16 shots with each of these blasters. With the Talon Claw, I got 9 hits. 7 of them were in a row, and most of the misses were just crazy close. This blaster is a beast. It's the final boss of the field, and this test is super unfair. The Aeon Pro got 4 hits. It was fairly inconsistent whether the ones that missed were really close or really far away. And again, no scar, no modifications, very little familiarity. With the Mark II, I got 3 hits, and most of my near misses were pretty close. I could likely do better with a rebarrel or a slight tuning. Again, this is a stock test of the blaster as it came to me. And practice is essential. I do need more, and I do think a lot of the issue was me personally not being used to the pistol ergonomics. But I was able to hit the same target. It is possible to hit those hits. Also, hitting cover is advantageous on the field. Keeps people's heads down. I do think that the Dart Zone Pro Mark II is a viable secondary for competitive. It's a powerhouse in a small form factor. It's decently close to primary performance in my specific playstyle. I love that it doesn't have the complexity of external magazines, and honestly, the biggest downside is the real steel form factor. If I'm just pulling it for a shot or two, I'm just going to use it as it is, but I will be carrying the muzzle shroud on me in case of extended use. It clips on just effortlessly and does add some optical purchase for intuitive aiming, which is how I aim. And it just makes it so much less gun-like to the wandering eyes of bystanders. Luckily, it doesn't seem to affect performance all that much, which is awesome. And there's a barrel inside of here that you could replace with a shortened worker scar, but that will impact FPS, so decide if you want to. You'll have to decide for yourselves if this package is worth $80. Again, gear and blasters and equipment is so personalized that don't listen to what I do, try it, see if it makes sense to you. But for me, this is a yes, and you will very likely see me with a Mark II on the field at the next tournament. Hopefully in the holster. I don't want my blaster to fail. So what do you think? Is the Mark II viable for competitive? Do you think it'd be better for HVZ or for Superstock? Do you not like it at all? I mean, let me know. And also let me know if you like this type of video. Should we do more reviews on blasters? I think it's kind of fun, even though it's way more work. There's the like button, subscribe button down near the comments, and there's also a description. I'll put a link to Target.com where you can purchase the Dart Zone Pro Mark II, as well as a link to some of our Dauntless merch. We've got shirts, we've got a patch, we've got stickers. So you can support the best competitive Nerf team and buy a pretty sweet blaster if you just click. Outros, man. Still not good at it. I miss competitive.